Welcome into the FiredUP Network and TimeOut KC. Joined again by the host of the KC Sports Authority. We got Keegan Russell and Christopher Tenpenny. Guys, it's been a little bit since I had you both on. The last time we talked, we were talking with really high expectations for the team that's in the picture behind me, your KU football Jayhawks. And man, it hasn't gone well. They had a glorified scrimmage against Lindenwood, who is really kind of the football equivalent of Prairie View A&M to basketball. They're the school that you contract and, hey, here's a couple $100,000. We're going to beat you into the ground, but everybody gets their reps in. So that one doesn't count. Two real games. University of Illinois, who's going to finish towards the bottom of the Big Ten. I think everybody agrees with that. And UNLV, who, while being really good in the Mountain West, is still in the Mountain West. And a team that KU just beat in a bowl game, at the end of last season. And it didn't go well. I was there. I was in attendance. And, man, it was just bad. The offense looked really bad. I mean, I guess the best thing you could say is the line looked good, but it really didn't matter because they couldn't hit open receivers, and Jalen Daniels was skipping passes into receivers and airmailing long passes. Is it simply just that he hasn't had the opportunity to get in there and play, and we're asking too much because so much of KU's offense is counted on the quarterback during this Lance Leipold era, either Jalen Daniels or Jason Bean. And, maybe it's just too much to ask. What do you think, Keegan?
That is the question all of KU football wants to know. Is it Jalen Daniels' rust? Is it the lack of playing time the last 2 years? Is it the injury? Or is it the offensive coordinator? And I can tell you, not just as a fan, but covering the team and talking with fans and other podcasts around the area, KU football is in almost full panic mode right now. This was supposed to be the year. Chance of going undefeated up until the K-State game was fully on the table. College football playoff fully on the table. Some of those aspirations are still possible. But yeah, it's been ugly. It's the fan base, in my opinion, I think is divided on Jalen Daniels is washed at post-injury, and Jeff Grimes is the worst offensive coordinator in the history of football, and a peewee defensive coordinator could scheme up enough to slow him down. So that's, to me, where the fan base stands. Personally, I think there is some rust with Jalen, but we've seen plenty of game tape the last several years to show what he is capable of. So that's why I'm on the side of it's got to be the offensive coordinator. That's the only major change this offseason. Basically, the entire offense is back. You swap out 2 offensive linemen. You swap a tight end out. Virtually everything else is the same. The playbook's
8 out of 11 starters.
Different. Yeah. So the answer to me is offensive coordinator. Clearly, the pairing there has not worked yet. Does that mean it's not going to work all season? I don't know. It's still early. But from a Kansas football fan perspective, there's a lot of panic and frustration, and a lot of petitions going around to get Jeff Grimes fired, as the fan base believes he is the one primarily
not happening this early. Yeah. Christopher, will you be the voice of reason to talk Jayhawk fans off the cliff?
Well, Virgin makes me take back every bad thing I ever said about Jason Bean. That's for sure. Kind of wish he.
Or are you going to push him off the cliff?
I might just push him off the cliff, But my whole thing is, if there's 2 sides to it, it probably lands somewhere in the middle. Clearly here, I think a bad offensive coordinator, a good quarterback can overcome, and a good offensive coordinator, especially when you have Neal and Highstar on the backfield, can overcome a bad quarterback play. So clearly they're just playing off each other. It's not a good look right now. One of them needs to fix it if that KU has any chance of riding the table, preferably both. I think Daniels, I think it's fair to say it's rusty. He hasn't been playing much, probably a little bit in his head because he's probably so concerned about getting that injury bug off of him. He doesn't want that tag anymore. It has to have some kind of impact. So it's early, but it's been rough. I mean, the Illinois game, okay, that's one thing. To come back and do a dud against UNLV, I'm not quite over the cliff, but I get where KU fans are coming from.
Yeah.
It's been a rough
It
last.
feels like you're hanging on with like 2 or 3 fingers there, waiting for someone to reach out and pick you
Holding
up.
on to the
Or
vine.
summoning the strength to
Yeah.
pull yourself up.
Exactly.
Well, let's hear from the man in the position of authority to address all these issues. KU head coach Lance Leipold. I got to ask him after the game, hey, this is 2 real games for Jaylen Daniels. I mean, is it just that he hasn't played in almost 2 years?
Lance, I wanted to ask about just the difficult situation, because Jalen's only played a few games now in 2 years. It is really challenging to step into this level of competition. I mean, UNLV's a quality football team, and does at least getting these 2 games in give them a better leg up as you head into the Big 12?
Well, we're 3 games in now, so I can't. I'm not going to sit up here making excuses. That's not right. That's not whatever. It starts. We have to own that we aren't playing well enough to win. Could we say that he hadn't played a game since what? I don't know. Was it BYU or whatever? Somewhere in there last year. Quarterbacks aren't going to be live in fall camp, so is there some of that? I don't know. I don't ask them because I'm not going to I don't think that's a fair question, really, because to create that stimulus in practice is difficult. So,
sure.
But I think there's times that you see him making throws that have been every bit as good, if not better, than he's ever made before. And then there's times where it's not, but everybody can do better. Everybody. And like I said, it starts with the head coach, and I need to do better. Our staff needs to do better. And we will find a way. I mean, there's a lot of football to play yet with this group, and we haven't played a conference game yet. So if you want to try to do something, but it's not going to get any easier, and I know there's going to be more people doubting, and the best thing, and I've tried to tell our guys for a long time, the most important thing are the guys in the room, in our team meeting room every day, because they're the ones that know everybody that's working and going on, and everyone else will, unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, everyone is entitled to an opinion, and but if we let opinions from the outside affect the locker room, then it's going to be a long fall.
Sure.
Well, so that was a long way to say, yeah, maybe, because
Does not instill a lot of confidence.
No, it wasn't a confident answer. It wasn't, hey, he's got it dialed in. There's a couple of things. We saw it in the film. We're going to get it fixed. It's all good. Don't worry about it. It was a meandering answer to kind of give multiple excuses without giving a definitive excuse, because he started it out by saying, I'm not going to give excuses. So that counts, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the frustration's been. You've seen a lot, especially if you follow the KU Twitter sphere. There's been a lot of frustration for 2 years now. The whole Jaylen Daniels injury situation, just the way it was covered last year, It was very mysterious all the time, and I would never doubt Lance Leipold as a coach, because I think he's the best coach KU football is ever going to have in the history of their program up to this point, for sure. But there's been a lot of frustration with how they've handled things from a communication perspective on this. And the last 2 weeks, you haven't really seen the accountability, take responsibility for our failures, and we're going to get it right. It's been a lot of, I'm trying to tell you what the answer is without telling you what the answer is. And so I think the fan base just keeps seeing that as, why aren't you willing to admit that Jalen's bad this year and your offensive coordinator doesn't know how to fix it? We've even seen, not to get ahead of ourselves in this conversation right now, but even Jeff Grimes in today's press conferences, same thing. It was, hey, we've hit rock bottom, and I guess we'll figure it out in practice. There's been no vocal communication of, hey, we've been bad, we've identified the issues, and here's the game plan to get better. And I think that's why fans are frustrated, because to us, it seems that the answers are obvious. Your offensive coordinator either has to go or needs to figure out how to get back on the right path with getting Jaylen going, and you need to instill confidence in the program to the fan base. And those two things don't seem to be communicated to the fan base right now.
Well, I'm gonna veer the other way, Keegan and Chris, see if you agree with this. Watching it closely, the only passes that looked crisp were a planned bootleg where Jalen was able to throw his whole body in to that pass and, throw it like a javelin to the receiver, straight line of sight. I just don't think he's healthy. Having had a broken back in sports myself and having multiple vertebrae fused back in high school, it takes a long time to get the ability to rotate. And, being evasive and throwing on the move is such a big part of Jalen's game. I just don't think he's healthy. Or he's healthy, but he's not at the level that he was at. And it's going to take a while to play.
Yeah, there definitely appears to be limitations into what he can do. And I also think he's just having a hard time reading the defenses. College is set up to where a lot of quarterbacks, you don't have to do much. But if he can't create because he can't throw except for one way, and then he can't read past the one read, it's going to look like it has. So I think there's some truth there, exactly what you're saying, where he's not 100%. He may be 95%, but that 5% that's still hurt, is really limiting the things that KU can do, which then, again, comes back to this whole circle. It looks bad on Grimes because there's only so many plays he can call, and we're yelling at him for his play call. So it's definitely just back and forth off of each other.
Yeah, because, short passes from the pockets were skipped in, and long passes were airmailed. So there was nothing that looked good except a one read bootleg directly to that receiver. So basically a one-person pattern. And that's not going to be winning offense in a major conference. Not anymore. Maybe years ago, but not now. Let me ask you guys one more question. Cole Ballard, do you want to see him, or is going with a less than 100% Jalen Daniels still your best chance to win? And Cole Ballard's dad's the GM of Indianapolis. He was Mr. Football Indiana. Looked okay in relief of being last year. Is he a better answer, maybe?
I think the question you have to find the answer to before you get into Cole. Well, you were there the other night. Fans were cheering, "Hey, we want Cole Ballard."
They were booing. They were flat booing.
Yeah, booing Jalen. We want Ballard.
Mood in the stadium turned real hard at halftime. Yeah. And for what it's worth, I was sitting with two NFL scouts. They left.
Yeah, that's not a good look.
Yeah.
But to me, the question then is, the obvious answer is Jalen has a higher ceiling than Cole Ballard for sure. To me, I think it still comes back to new offensive coordinator, different system. Is it the system that's the problem? Is it the player not adapting to the system? Is it the system not figuring out how to utilize the skill set of the player? And again, last year and the last couple of years with Kotelnicki, we saw Jalen's ability to create plays and use his arm and his athleticism work tremendously. And this year, to me, I do think, like Chris is saying, there's a balance between Jalen does not look good and the system is not working. When it is working, running the ball with Highshaw and Neal works effectively. Clearly, getting the ball in Luke Grimm's hand is also working. So to me, I think it's not about do you put Cole Ballard out there and feel like he's going to put together better results. I think is Cole Ballard going to run the offense and run the system the way Jeff Grimes wants it, or is the system just not really centered around Jalen Daniels' skill set? And I think, after 3 games, obviously the first half against Lindenwood, we saw Jalen air it out plenty and look fine. It's the progression of reads, like Chris said. There's been a lot of talk that Jeff Grimes has a much tighter leash on the way games are called, and that he is influencing the way Jalen is reading the field and making a lot of those predetermined reads for him. And to me, it just looks like everything's so scripted that Jalen's not playing free. He's playing, all right, I have to go here. This is the read. This is where they want me to go. And so I don't think the answer is sit him, but it might be if we go through another first half against West Virginia and the offense outside of the scripted first 10, 15 plays looks bad. I don't see why sitting him out for a series or two just to hit the reset, just to see what Ballard does is a bad reason, because the way the season's going right now, you're one more loss away from the season being completely wasted. So you might as well give him an opportunity. But I still think at the end of the day, Jalen's your best quarterback. Jalen, when healthy and looking right, he's one of the 5 to 10 best quarterbacks in the country. I think he's got enough game tape to show that. It's just about getting them to sync up correctly. And you said the offense has looked terrible, and that's not just Jalen. It's some of the other guys. Receivers haven't been involved at all. The tight ends haven't done lick of anything. It's been all definitely on Highshaw.
Yeah, and Christopher, as negative as it went, and the fans were really super enthusiastic. It was a sellout crowd, standing room only. Everybody was going nuts in the first half. They looked like they were going to dominate it. UNLV, a good UNLV team, coached by Barry Odom, former head coach of Missouri. And, it just started falling apart with calling that timeout and then throwing the interception at the end of the first half. UNLV, who had done nothing offensively, punches in a touchdown. Now it's anybody's ball game. And then at the end, KU, instead of falling on a fumble by UNLV's quarterback, tried to scoop it and score, fumbled it forward. UNLV gets it. That hurt. The pass interference and what would have been an uncatchable ball in the end zone puts UNLV in position to score. So there were plenty of mistakes all around. I don't want to just pile it all on Jalen. It was the most obvious. He's the most visible. Do you think if a couple of those plays went the other way, everybody would be, hey, okay, man, we lost to an Illinois team, but they're 3-0. They're going to be pretty good. UNLV is pretty good. We won a close game. It's okay. We're all good.
Yeah, I mean, if they find a way to win one of those last two games, like, again, the tone is definitely different. Dropping both is why it's such panic mode. And, like, again, we've been piling on Jalen a little bit, but it is Grimes. Like, something I noticed that was driving me crazy, they're sitting there waiting for draw up the script at the end of the game for the last possession. Like, you just know that they're trying to figure out what plays we need to get down the field. The first play is a trips right. The second play is a trips left. Like, go back and watch it. It took 15 seconds for all three receivers. That's on the OC, right?
Yeah,
there.
they were in no danger of scoring on that drive.
There's no planning at all, it feels like, or no real thought process. It's just I don't even know how to explain what the thought process there, especially when you have a quarterback that didn't do anything in the second half, So, like, why is that? So there's just a number of things. To your question a little bit ago, I still think you got to stay with Daniels just for name value. I mean, I think you need to, even though they've already been running it a decent amount, you need to up that, rely on Neal and Highshaw as much as possible. And the threat of Jalen is higher than Ballard. So maybe that will keep defense a little more honest, and then just kind of slowly work back in some of those different passing concepts to see if he can get a little bit more confidence that way by just relying on the run game like 80% of the time, which sounds crazy. Yeah. That's kind of where they're at.
And then no more freaking bubble screens.
Yeah, no more.
Just no more. Just
everyone's a million miles.
Offense coordinators love the bubble screens because it's a safe pass. Here, just because I agree with what both of you guys are saying, this clip from Jalen, I think, perfectly summarizes overthinking.
The first interception was a cover 3. The high safety made a play on the seam. The seam was open much earlier than I thought it would be. I was going through my progression, and as I got to number 3, which was Q-Skin, the safety read my eyes the whole entire time and just made a play as I tried to fit the ball in there. The second interception was they played good defense all the way around. Looking back at it, the only thing that I had was my check down to the boundary. They covered every single route. That was supposed to be a part of that play, and I just hats off to the defense for making a play on that.
That just didn't. It just didn't resonate. He answered the question. Yeah. He gave a good answer. I mean, you can't complain. Hey, he didn't answer it, but just the mannerism was like, okay, yeah, I was supposed to do this. This is what I did. Here's what happened. Bump, 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 bump. I mean, it's just too much. I mean, it's a game of instinct, right? It's a game of, okay, you study to react. You study so you're not thinking. You just act in the game. That's why you practice. And it seems like, I think you guys nailed it, thinking a little bit too much. Well, hey, now the preseason's over. We're stepping into the Big 12, taking on a West Virginia team that you can honestly say about the same thing you said about the Jayhawks. They both go to this game at 1-2. It's in Morgantown, a really tough place to play. You fly into Pittsburgh, you take a bus up there. If there's one team that doesn't belong in the new Big 12, it's West Virginia. That's where they're going. Both teams are disappointed. They're both sitting at 1-2. West Virginia, a 2.5-point favorite going into the game. They're predicting it's going to be a low-scoring game for a Big 12 game, a 56.5-point over-under. How do you guys feel about this game? It's going to be good weather in West Virginia, 78 degrees, sunny. No excuses. Just can't you beat the Mountaineers?
Not to go basketball mode here, but everybody Big 12 knows that when you go into Morgantown at an early game Saturday, kickoff or on the hardwood, weird things happen. So that element always scares me because it is West Va. They have a very good atmosphere. But let's be honest, this West Virginia team looks terrible.
Yeah.
Not that they've had an insanely tough schedule, and they finally put up points against Pittsburgh, but they mustered 12 points against Penn State, who's got a really good defense, and they obviously blew out Albany, but they don't really look the part. So the fact that they're a 2.5-point favorite really shows you the lack of confidence nationally people have in the Jayhawks after the first three games. But 3 years ago now, this was the game that really kick-started the upstart for the program with the Kobe Bryant pick 6 at the end of the game. So I think that's going to play an element here. Our defense has been really good. But yeah, this could be a very ugly, slow-moving game with lots of turnovers. Offense looks sloppy, and the team that plays the best fundamental football in the second half, I think, is the one that comes out. But to give you the bit of optimism, and we'll talk about it this week on our podcast as well, I don't see how KU comes out and drops a third game the way they have so far. If they didn't learn after Illinois, there's no way they can't learn the way after the UNLV game. So I feel like they'll come out more prepared and execute better. And personally, I think this is Jalen Daniels' bounce back game.
Okay. Christopher, what do you think?
Yeah, I see it differently. I think it is. I mean, I'm even though they're underdogs and even though they looked really bad last 2 weeks, I still am leaning KU, and that may just be my bias, but I think it's the perfect game to do what I said earlier, like pound the rock. I don't think West Virginia is going to go up and drop 40 points on you. I think it's going to be about ball control and about who makes the fewer mistakes. And I think it's a lot easier to make fewer mistakes when Neal and Highshaw are touching the ball most of the time. So work Jalen in. I hope his stat line does not need to be gaudy. It just needs to have 0, maybe 1 in the turnover range. I'm giving it maybe 1, but preferably 0. And I think KU wins that game. If they keep calling it how they have been, he's got 2 picks or a fumble or whatnot, they could be rolling in Morgantown real quick.
Yeah, win the turnover battle and, march in. Because honestly, if you win the turnover battle, you don't even have to win the turnover battle. If you don't throw the interception at the end of the first half, they win against a good UNLV team who's probably better than this West Virginia team is. So, I'll go with
Illinois. Illinois is ranked now. And UNLV was knocking on the door, and UNLV is now getting a lot of talk to be the outside team looking into the college football playoff race in their conference. So, but yeah, KU's got to get right. They cannot go into conference play 0-1, 1-3 on the season, because we're already fighting the Kelly Leipold tweet or fake tweet on fan support. And the way the last 2 weeks have gone, you can't go out there and drop it again and expect the fans to keep showing up, because they're going to leave right away. So it's an important game.
It's going to be a bad look playing in front of a half-empty Arrowhead Stadium too.
Oh my gosh,
that's not going to look good. They
might be giving away free
points to them. They want to reconsider and play some of those conference games at Children's University Park. A sellout crowd's a little bit better than half-empty. No matter what. I mean, I don't know. Can KU draw 75,000 people to a conference game for anybody except Iowa State? The Iowa State game will take care of itself.
Right. Yeah. With it being 60% Iowa State fans. Yeah. Especially
it'll be basically a road game, but yeah.
Right. No, they can't. I mean, maybe if they were, 3-0 right now and rolling, maybe they get close. Yeah. But even then, I still don't know if they get there on their own.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's take a more positive look. The Kansas City Current, they are 1 game away from the playoffs, clinching their playoff spot. They kind of avenged their first loss of the season. They went to Orlando, hard-fought game against the Pride, the leader at the top of the table, a 0-0 draw. Here's what Michelle Cooper had to say about going to Orlando and getting that draw.
I think both teams knew that it was going to be like a chess match because of what happened last game, and we know that we both are high intensity teams, but with factors of like the weather, travel, all of these things, and wanting to chase a win from both sides, we knew that it was going to be a very tactical and like one mistake could lead to a goal type of game. So we knew that it was going to be a game like that, and I'm just glad that we were able to travel there, play at their home, and get a point.
I think she made a good point because that was a challenging game. The Currents made a lot of changes, and you got to give them credit because they took that loss to Orlando when they went into the international break and said, okay, hey, we want to win the championship. We're not good enough. We need to build up our back line, and we need to make sure that we're bringing impact players off when we sub out. And they made major acquisitions, added 2 goalkeepers, added Alma Cook, who was a former U.S. national team center defender, Kayla Sharples, an all NWSL central defender, and they added more offense, signing Jericho and Hilda, my new favorite nickname in professional sports, the breadwinner, who really haven't factored in much yet, but they seem like they're ready now. And maybe, hey, now we got our it's football, right? We got our feet underneath us. They got to win 1-0 their last home game. They go and draw against the best team in the league. Feeling pretty good about them, that they still have a good shot to be here for the league championship when that comes up Thanksgiving weekend in Kansas City.
Yeah, and looking at some of the stats here, it's always good when you are one of the top teams in goal differential. They're sitting at plus 15, which is third, about 9 goals behind the leader there and about 7 goals behind or ahead of the next person. So that, I mean, just like what's happened with the Royals right now this year too, when you're leading in run differential more times than not, that means you have a really good chance at winning a majority of games. And that's why they're a top 4 team right now. And if you keep doing that, even when you have the 0-0 or the 1-0 game there, you're slowly inching closer and closer. And I think that's one of the interesting things about the soccer format is it's not always about your win-loss record. It is, but you look at points scored, you look at the run differential there, and the way they're sitting right now, I mean, they kind of control their own destiny. If they keep doing what they're doing, they're going to have a really good shot down the stretch.
Yeah, especially if they get home field advantage, because they have a very unique advantage in their league, having the only stadium that's solely built for a women's football team at CPKC Stadium, selling it out. They know it's going to be a sellout. Every game's already sold out because of season tickets. And in soccer, football, home field is a huge difference. It makes a big difference. If you draw on the road and win at home, you're going to be fine. And I believe if they beat Washington this week at home, they basically clinch a home field game in the playoffs. So it's a great position to be in. They still have a few weeks to go in the regular season, and it shows that you can make that commitment, spend a little bit of money, and as we seg over to the Royals, you make those acquisitions when it's near the deadline, which they did. They made 4 big acquisitions right before the trade deadline closed in the NWSL. And I think it's going to bear results. It takes a little while to get your feet under you because, you're getting a new chemistry, you're working in a new lineup, and now they seem to be on that right path. And I think we can say the same thing for the Royals, because the Royals went ahead and they made a flurry of moves and they added money to the payroll, which is something very un-Royals-ish. But they seem to be gaining now, and just like the Current had a little bit of a losing streak, the Royals had a little bit of a losing streak after making all these acquisitions, but now they seem to have righted the ship, and they're in a really, really good position to secure that wild card and not necessarily out of the division yet. How you guys feel about the Royals where they sit right now? You can start, Chris.
Yeah, I feel great about, the playoffs. They don't even have to play well down the stretch. Obviously, you want to go into the playoffs hot, but they put themselves to where you can drop a few. I mean, this Detroit Tiger series feels kind of important, but even then, none of it's must win, even if they for some reason somehow got swept. So that's a good spot to be with only 11 to go thing at this point, to where that is not that amount of pressure yet. I think the thing about the Royals that's interesting to me is going to be the playoff roster construction, because the bullpen has been the talking point all season long. And it's like, do you want the bullpen just to be all the failed starters? Because that's kind of where they're leaning. Like, you think in a 3-game playoff series, it's going to be Reagan's, Lugo, Walker are going to be your 3. So that means Singer's going to go to the bullpen. Yeah, Lorenzen's going to go to the bullpen because he's tracking to be back. Marsh and Lynch have looked really good in their time. They're probably going to be in the bullpen. All of a sudden, it's like you got Urseg, Bubich, and Long, and then 4 guys that have started the rest of the year. So, like, I that's kind of what I'm interested in, to see, do they go more position players just because Contreras likes to mismatch and go starters in the pen? Or that's where I'm at right now. The games itself on a day-to-day basis actually don't quite matter, because I'm kind of where the division's out. I mean, it's there, but it's not, in my opinion. And not having the tiebreaker against Baltimore makes me feel pretty confident that the Royals are probably going to be the 5 seed going forward.
Yeah, it would be hard to catch here. Forget hard. It would be almost impossible to catch the Guardians for the division. Right. The Guardians basically need to lose out. The Royals need to win out.
They need an epic collapse.
Yeah. Well, it is Cleveland, so that's a possibility. I've covered sports in Cleveland. I saw plenty of epic collapses. It's more than possible, but I think they got the division. They can collapse in the playoffs. But
what's wild to me about that, with Cleveland still leading the division, again, if we're getting to some analytics here, the Royals have the best run differential in the division, 23 better than the Guardians. They've also scored more runs than the Guardians, and they've given up less runs than the Guardians themselves have scored, yet they're still in this 4.5 game deficit, which I just find interesting, because you look across all the other divisions.
Sure.
The team with the best run differential in their division is in first place in their division.
Yeah, the numbers say you should win.
And you've had the Guardians number this year in the head-to-head series. It's just, Detroit and Minnesota are sneaking back up, and the Royals have dropped several series this year they shouldn't have. And Cleveland's interesting. They've gone through stretches where their starting pitching and their bullpen looks like the best in baseball, and they've gone through stretches where they're relying on their bullpen to finish out a game because their starting pitching has struggled. But they're still a very dangerous team. I don't think Jose Ramirez gets enough credit for being an MVP conversation as he should. But yeah, coming down the stretch here, division or not, the Royals are, in my opinion, locked into a playoff spot unless they themselves have an epic collapse. And I like Chris's point there. That's something we're going to have conversations on too over the next couple of weeks, is what does that 26-man roster look like? Is it, like you said there, do you go to your starters out of the bullpen for 2 or 3 innings and go that approach? And I think what we'll at least see with Q, with the way they are analytical, is once we get to the playoffs, I don't think it's going to be about roles at all. It's going to be about matchups. So obviously, if you're going into Baltimore, and with that offense, or you're going into Yankee Stadium, I don't think you're playing Singer. So you probably know he's not going to be pitching that game. You're going with your best. But yeah, who comes out of the bullpen? Is it going to be starter, then Ursig for 2 innings? We've seen how the 7th, 8th. If a Royal starting pitcher doesn't get into the 7th, we've got trouble. Even though some of the bullpen has been decent, but you got to get to 7, and then you feel pretty good. You can throw Ursig out there for 2 innings if need be. It's funny down the stretch here, that has some cause for concern, but I think our group of guys is actually better suited for a playoff run than some of these other teams. Not that the starters are going to be great bullpen pieces necessarily, but I think that the way you manage a playoff team, smaller series, day by day, you're not worried about all the rest quite as much because you've got a little bit more time there to focus. I think they're honestly better suited for that. Yeah. So you're not. I don't think you're too worried about Ursig pitching too much. Yeah.
No, you can rest Ursig. You can, and here, to be fair, Michael Lorenzen has been a relief pitcher, and he's not a failed starter. He's actually been a pretty good starter. So I'm comfortable with him. Alec Marsh was in the bullpen some last year. I'm comfortable with him. Bubich has been terrific this year. He's been really your second most reliable reliever. That's good. I think less of the bullpen and more of those guys is probably a good thing, because the reason why the run differential isn't determining the division winner is because of those other guys, the bullpen, because we've blown a bunch of games and lost by 1 run because we threw away games that we were winning. Last night is one of them. You get a grand slam home run from Bobby Witt Jr. He gets another RBI. You wasted a triple by MJ Melendez, and 6 runs. You scored 6 runs. You got to win. You got to win at home if you score 6 runs. You can't blow that game.
Yeah.
So that's on the bullpen, and I don't think you see those guys in the playoffs because you're going to get the days off. You don't have to worry about burning your starters out because, heck, if you don't win, the season's over anyways. Let's go. And, you're not going to be running Will Smith out there. He's not going to get the chance to
or
run out
Chris
there
Stratton.
with the gas can. Chris Stratton, the general, is not going to be allowed to stay out there. If he gets 2 guys, if the first guy he faces looks horrible, okay, you're out of there. You're going to get somebody warming up. You're not going to leave him out there for the inning to give up 3 runs. It's going to be a different mentality, and I think you guys are right. I think the Royals team is set up better for that. It's just unfortunate we're missing Vinny Pasquantino because he was a really good piece and had really turned it on after having to shake off his injuries at the beginning of the season. It's just a real unfortunate bad break with the thumb injury, but it's a great piece to have coming back next year. And man, you got to be excited going into next season. And we're not even through this season, but this could be the best setup for a Royals run in years because we knew after they won the 2015 World Series that the whole roster was going to turn over.
Yeah.
So really just makes you feel super confident going into the next year that, man, they're in good position. And you got to be excited for this playoffs because here, if I told you guys in the beginning of the year, the Royals are going to win 83 games, everybody would have said, yes, I'm in.
Yep.
Yeah, and barring a massive collapse, they're going to win way more than 83 games. So it's been an amazingly successful year already. So anything else really, in my mind, is a bonus.
Yeah, and what gives me hope going into the playoffs, couple things. I mean, outside of, Judge and Soto just having insane offensive years, Yankees have best run differential plus 123. The Royals are second in the American League. But what gets me pumped is you look at all these potential series matchups, and, right as of right now, it's probably Baltimore to start. But almost any matchup you have, you feel like you've got the better starting pitcher going into that game, almost every single scenario. Unless somehow the Tigers figure out how to get in, you have to go up against Skubal in a 1 game there. But the Royals look to like they're going to have the better matchups each night, which gives you a lot of excitement. You've got one of the best players in the sport in Bobby Witt Jr., who you mentioned off air earlier, that first Royals shortstop to go 30-30 with home runs and stolen bases this year, and he's
first shortstop.
First shortstop.
Yeah.
And he looks like one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best players in baseball night in, night out. Salvi, doesn't have the same protection without Vinny behind him, but Salvi's been fine. So as long as you can get through the next 2.5 weeks, the next 10, 11 games without any other injury concerns, you got to feel like the Royals might actually be one of the better positions heading into the playoffs than some of their other potential competition. The Twins still scare me a lot. Chris and I have talked about that.
Yeah.
That the Twins, just for whatever reason, are a horrible matchup for us. They've just got the right guys up and down that lineup. But again, you got to feel good night in and night out when you've probably got the edge starting pitching wise, and in the playoffs it's about pitching.
I agree. You got to feel pretty confident. I mean, outside of and like I said, Chris, everything's house money at this point. I mean, if they make it to the playoffs and they get bumped in the first round, okay.
Yeah, no, it would be a bummer if they got bumped in the first round. But like you said, house money, we'd get over, talk about how much fun this year, how unexpected was, that it would live on forever. Kind of like that. I mean, that 03 team lives on forever, and they didn't even make the playoffs. They just won 83 games or whatever. So definitely a memorable season, regardless what happens. I'm really interested to see how, once they get to once they're in the playoffs, how the lefties do, specifically MJ and Massey. Because I think it was Dombrowski, the GM of the Phillies, who said years ago, it was like, to really have a chance, you need to have some left-handed slug. Like, that's what you need. You need someone that can hit that tough right-handed reliever. And
Yeah.
he's shown that. He had David Ortiz when he was in Boston. He has Harper right now. The Royals did have Vinny, but Vinny's gone. So that leaves Massey and MJ, two guys who have been up and down. And I'm kind of hoping MJ has that Moose-like run. I know it's a little optimistic, but I was looking at the numbers. And I'm nerding out a little bit, but MJ's been they're not that different at this point in the career. MJ's actually better offensively at this point and at this age than Moose was. So we've seen MJ have the confidence. We've seen MJ have clutch. If he can kind of have that Moose-esque run where he runs into a couple big homers, Moose's career took off after that. I would love to see something like that happen to one of the young lefties in the Royals lineup.
Yeah, we look at Moustakas' career early in the World Series year through definitely royal blue colored classes because he was down in like the 220s and I think he hit 14 home runs. So he was not a all-star player by any means that year, but he came through in the clutch and made a few big plays, and that was enough. And that makes you a legend in baseball. So the future is still bright for MJ Melendez. He could still reclaim that glory as the minor league home run leader that he is, and the guy that we're hoping we see at some point. And,
it's just funny how it's funny how 2 out of every 10 at bats is looked at as terrible, but you get that third hit in every 10 at bats, and man, you're on a whole nother level.
Oh
yeah, and that's what's fun about baseball. Every single day, you've got a new opportunity to go out there and make a difference on the field. And the Royals have a lot of guys that have that opportunity this year to have that type of moment. Yes, Melendez hasn't had the best of seasons. He's looked better in the second half than the first half, of course. But all it takes is one swing of the bat in October to forget a 200 batting average season.
Absolutely. Now let's move to the National Football League. Kansas City Chiefs go to 2-0. They get to go on the road to Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, take on a shockingly 1-1 Atlanta Falcons. Big assist to the Philadelphia Eagles for giving the Falcons the opportunity to win that game. The pressure cooker is going to be on Nick Sirianni even a little bit more. I was able to go to Philadelphia for WrestleMania this year in April, and some of the Philadelphia sports writers that I talked to and sports fans that I talked to when I was in between covering WrestleMania events, they were asking for Sirianni to get fired already, and that was April. So the pressure's on him. No issues in Kansas City with anybody asking for anyone's job, but it was a rough win. Andy Reid talked about the takeaways, and surprisingly, they were able to win a game where they lost the takeaways 3-1.
So what do we learn from this? Turnovers, they kill you. They very seldom give you an opportunity to win the game. So if you come out with a win with 3 turnovers, that's a plus, but we've got to take care of business there. And then penalties, when you're all of these things on the plus side of the field, those end up being points, whether it's a field goal or whether it's a touchdown. Those are points. So we've got to make sure we take care of business with that and improve. And we had some young guys that end up with some of these penalties, and they'll learn from it. And Kingsley, he's going against arguably one of the best defensive ends in the league. It'll be a great experience that he can put away and here and learn from. And I end up taking him out of the game. Sometimes you got to take a step back to take a step forward. So, Wanye came in and did a nice job. Now he also had a penalty there, but very seldom are you going to get a guy like that right there that you're playing against. And what you want to do is learn from it and move forward. So.
I thought that really kind of summed up the game too, because you came out of it with a win. Against a good team, a Cincinnati team that always kind of struggles to begin the season. But hey, you get the win, and it was definitively a pass interference at the end. And to be fair, if Wanye Morris doesn't slap at Hendrickson's face, then Kelsey has a 51-yard pass and you're in chip shot range. So the Chiefs got in position to win the game twice. What was your guys' takeaway of this game? Definitely a better start to this year than last year.
Yeah, I still, I think the takeaway I've had across the NFL as a whole this year is there's been a lot of sloppy offensive possessions. Some of that might be guys don't get as much work in the preseason as they did in the past. But, with the Chiefs, that's never really been an issue for us. It's been the way we facilitate our off seasons. They're prepared. So the fact that they're still, looking a little sloppy offensively has me worried. But again, the Bengals, just like I was talking about with the Twins with the Royals, the Bengals just seem to have our number matchup wise. That game is always ugly. The second that line came out as Chiefs plus 6.5 or minus 6.5, I'm going, ain't no way. This game is always down to a field goal. Well, I think 4 of the last 5 have been a field goal, winning the game for either team. And they just play really well. Trey Hendrickson looks like prime J.J. Watt when he plays the Chiefs. And it doesn't matter where he lines up, he finds a mismatch. Their secondary, even though it's one of the worst secondaries in the NFL, just knows where to play the zones, and Mahomes made a few mistakes, of course. But these types of games early in the season that you win ugly, I mean, even going back to Baltimore, it takes a toe to win that game. Those, I think, pile up at the end of the season. So that even when maybe the offense isn't clicking 100% yet, Kelsey hasn't been involved. The linebacking core on tight ends hasn't looked great. You've got some injuries stacking up. The fact that you can still go out and win games like this when you're playing maybe your C or B game at best makes you feel good that as we get into the farther parts of the season, you'll feel good. And if we're being honest, we all know, I was talking to a buddy about this the other day. He was like, man, the Chiefs look terrible offensively. But it doesn't matter because as soon as postseason starts, that switch flips on, and then they're the most dominant team in football. So in reality, whatever feelings you have right now probably doesn't matter too much, because come weeks 16 through 19, we're going to be sitting here going, all right, it's playoff time.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't even think the offense looked that terrible. Yes, there were some big mistakes which led to that, but you're talking about a rookie fumble and Mahomes not reading, not accounting for a linebacker, which that was a really bad interception. And then, the Britt interception, not only was it incredible, also Worthy didn't really do himself any favors with the release he took, with how much feel he had to the inside. So I think that they're 1 or 2 plays away from really breaking that thing away. The turnovers is just what kept Cincinnati in that game. Luckily, they gave one back, which really turned that game on its head. But I think the offense is way closer. The line is still done. I mean, we saw the push they're getting. Doesn't matter if Steele was running or Pacheco. The run game has been very good at this point. You're still going to take a little bit for that receiving core to gel, especially when you go all through camp or OTAs. Hollywood Brown's going to be the one. We're not going to need Worthy. He's going to be able to adjust, and automatically that's gone. So now they're having to try to get this rookie involved. They brought Juju back, trying to get him involved. It's not going to be as clean as it needs to be right now. But I still think I've seen a lot of promising stuff on that offensive where I'm not. Yeah, it was an ugly stat line game for Mahomes, but overall, I still think the offense looks to be trending way better than they were last year, where it was just at times abysmal, which is rough with a Patrick Mahomes-led offense.
And even when we look bad, you still can't beat Mahomes.
Right, you still can't beat him. Yeah.
What's there to be concerned about?
No, I think you got to feel dramatically better, too. Even without Hollywood Brown, having your wide receivers being a Rashee Rice that is now legitimately one of the best receivers in the league.
Right.
Justin Watson is a capable number 3 receiver. Xavier Worthy can fly. We saw what he can do, the impact he can make in game 1. Juju Smith-Schuster is your 4th option. That's okay. He can be your number 4 guy. We haven't even had to see McCole Hardman in on a wide receiver snap yet, whereas last year he was our hope. We needed McCole Hardman. So you're in a much, much better place. And I think the tight ends, Noah's looked really good so far. They re-signed him. He's got an extension. And Jared Wiley, I think, is going to be an impact player. And then we'll see. I think Kelsey will get more involved. Of course, there's all sorts of talk that, hey, he's done. He only had 1 catch for 5 yards. They're discounting the fact that he had what would have been the game-winning catch pulled back from an incidental penalty. And Patrick Mahomes said that a lot of Kelsey's struggles were because the Bengals chose to take him away.
Yeah, no, they're doing a great job of just kind of having 2 people for him. I mean, pretty much the entire game. That's why you've seen guys like Rashee and Worthy. I mean, if you look at the first touchdown, I'm actually looking to Trav, and the backside safety goes all the way across the field to help guard Travis, and then he throw the ball down the sideline to Rashee, and that's kind of what they've been doing. And obviously, we played 2 opponents we've played a lot, so they have a plan on how they're going to account for Travis. But as the season goes on, I mean, he's going to get his catches, he's going to get his yards. But the leader that he is what's special is he's hyping everybody up, he's keeping everybody motivated, and that's what you need out of your great players.
He's not worried. I'm not worried. I think he'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time till he gets more involved.
Yeah, and if Rashee Rice lights up another team, they're going to have to start moving over to cover somebody else. Now, an area of concern, though, Isaiah Pacheco going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, has a broken fibula. Andy Reid talked about that. What are they going to do?
As far as Pacheco goes, we will go with the guys that we have here now. Veach is kind of going through his lists and looking at people, and we'll just see where that goes. But we're blessed to have some good people here.
And they added a person back. The prodigal running back has returned. Kareem Hunt re-signed. He's going to be on the practice squad for probably a week or two. He was not in training camp this year. He was working out with his college and working out with his personal trainer. So hopefully it's a week and he's ready to go. Clyde Edwards-Helaire should be back in week 4. Chiefs have 3 open spots on their 53-man roster. So you can actually elevate Kareem Hunt and add Clyde Edwards-Helaire and still have a spot open if they want to bring up somebody or add another wide receiver. You feeling good with Carson Steele, Samaje Perine, and Kareem Hunt coming in a week or two?
I think what you're hoping for is that lightning strikes in a bottle thrice. Brett Veach has done this twice now, where the running back coming into the season was an established veteran that was supposed to be your bell cow. And it started first with Spencer Ware coming off a really good year, comes into training camp hurt. And so you got Kareem Hunt early. And after that first fumble, Kareem Hunt became one of the 5 best running backs in the season that year. Flip forward a couple years later, same kind of thing happens, and you have Isaiah Pacheco step into the thing. So I think you're hoping that situation comes about a third time with Carson Steele. He got a decent amount of run time this last game, and I know he had the fumble, but 4th down and short gets the first down there. So I think we're going to see a heavy amount of Steele this week. I think we'll also see a lot more Perine than we have so far. And my guess is they'll elevate Keontae Ingram off the practice squad for the Falcons game. I don't think they need Kareem Hunt for that game. The Falcons, I don't know, they don't look very good. So I don't think they need that. But it is going to be interesting to see how much they favor Steele versus Perine, because if Steele's not really there in pass pro yet, then maybe you see a lot more Perine. And I actually think that's fine, because I think Perine is one of the perfect additions to this team. He kind of fulfills that Jerick McKinnon role pretty well. And I think he's better than most people give him credit for. So I think it'll be interesting. I am excited to see Kareem Hunt back. He's not the same explosive runner he was before, but when you're in a situation with the Kansas City Chiefs like he's going to be the second go-around, not only will he probably be focused, I don't think there's going to be a ton of expectation for him. So maybe not this week, but the following week he starts to get involved. Maybe it's 5 to 10 plays, if that. I don't think you're really asking him to do a ton. I think it's going to be a lot of Perine and Carson Steele, and maybe we find the next great thing at running back with Carson Steele the more time he gets.
Oh man, he would be an NFL folk hero. The guy has a pet crocodile.
Yeah, he already is kind of getting into a folk legend kind of range with that pet crocodile. The thing about Steele is he's not as explosive as either of those two are. So I don't know if he can ever go full, take over, be a true RB1. So I don't necessarily think that we can expect that from Steele, but I just think that this game plan is going to be very similar to what we kind of saw against the Patriots. I think it was the Packers last year when Pacheco missed a couple games and you had Clyde and McKinnon. I think that Steele becomes Clyde and Perine becomes McKinnon, and you just kind of run, one's your pass catching guy, one's your running guy, but really your run game becomes jet sweep to Worthy and bubble screen to Rice, and maybe McCole Hardman gets a few extra snaps this week just because he can kind of take over that run type look for opposing defenses. So I don't. Yeah, Kareem maybe get activated this week. Either way, I don't know.
I don't think this week, but soon.
Right. Regardless if he does this week or not, like he's going to be nice to have a goal line. It's going to be nice to have another option, a guy that's been a number one before and has that experience in the NFL. But I don't really expect it to be too impactful down the stretch.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit more Noah Gray in there as a H-back, catching a couple of swing passes, and being an extra blocker, because whoever starts at left tackle, if it's Kingsley or it's Wanye, either one of them is going to need a little help probably.
Gotcha.
And you know what? Everybody else on the line's solid, so you can help the one spot. They're just going to have to swing over there, and hopefully you don't get too many matchups that are as far against you as that Bengals matchup was with Hendrickson. Well, hey, with that, let's go ahead to Weekly Champion. We'll get your Champions of the Week, brought to you by our sister channel, The Wrestling Spot.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is TimeOut, La Güera Loca, and you are watching Wrestling Spotlight.
And you can check out Weekly Champions on Wrestling Spotlight. It'll also be on this channel. This week, I'm talking to the center of attention, all eyes on her in the center of the ring, just like a circus. Brittany Brooks from Future Stars of Wrestling in Las Vegas, talking about her injury comeback and just kind of giving her feel about women's pro wrestling overall. With that, let's go ahead and get your champion of the week. Keegan, who's your weekly champion? Who gets the belt?
Yeah, it's hard not to go with one of the stars. So like I feel like I wanted the easy answer here is Bobby Witt. Despite the loss last night, he has a grand slam, goes 30-30 season and going down the playoffs there. So I feel like I want to lean there. But Lugo's had a really solid last couple of outings, so I want to say I'm going to go with Lugo coming down the stretch here as the guy that is still. Man, I don't even know. Even Michael Walker's looked good. How about I just go Royal starting rotation as a whole?
That's great. Yeah.
I'm going to take a cop out there and choose
They've
5.
been the straws that stirred the drink. There's no doubt about that. Chris.
And I got to go with Trent McDuffie. I mean, locked up Jamar Chase, got in his head a little bit, was really out saying much, caused a huge penalty, caused Chase to lose his head, to cause that huge penalty. Like, I think what was the stat? He's on 17 of the 38 routes that Jamar caught, and he only caught one pass on it for like 6 yards or something crazy like that. Like, Trent McDuffie is just he's been so good ever since he's come to Kansas City. And, you're wondering what he's going to look like without Snead, and he's going to have to be that true number one. And he hasn't missed a beat. He's even gotten better. So he's my champion of the week.
Well, and I'm going to go with our college team, our area college team that we basically just glanced at, but really didn't mention much. You'll have to catch College Gridiron to get more on them. How about the Missouri Tigers? They beat Boston College in a top 25 matchup in the pre-conference. They get to take on Vanderbilt. Eli Drinkwitz is in position to take that team to 4-0, and they've got a lot of potential. This is still going to be a big college football year here. KU could get it turned around. K-State is still sitting in the top 25, and MU sitting way up in the top 10, and basically they got the tiebreaker for the playoffs because they're in the SEC. So good position for MU, and I'll give the weekly championship to Coach Eli Drinkwitz for knocking off Boston College and getting that must-win game, because you lose that game, the rest of the season, you can't live up to the potential that you have. With that, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for catching us on the FiredUP Network. Download that TrueTVPlus app. That's the best way to watch the channel. You can also see us on Sports.tv and Carbon TV. And Keegan, Chris, where's the best place to find the KC Sports Authority?
Yep, you can find us also over on YouTube. Just search KC Sports Authority or at KCSA Pod. You can check us out on Spotify if you listen on the go. Any of our social medias as well at KCSA Pod. And if you're into sports betting, we have a new weekly segment called KCSA Game Day Gambles. So be sure to check that out on all of our channels to hopefully win some money this football season. Off to a good start so far.
Your stone cold lead pipe cinch lock of the week. KU to win? KU in the money line?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with. I mean, I'm gonna as the homer, I'm gonna bet it
dripping
anyway.
with confidence.
As the homer, I'm gonna bet it anyway. There's no way they drop a third one in a row.
There you go. KU to win. All right. Thanks for joining us here on the Fired Up Network. Stay tuned for more sports and entertainment right here. And get that TrueTVPlus app so you can see all of the great programming on Fired Up Network, Wrestling Spotlight, and the rest of the channels offered on TrueTVPlus. For Christopher Tenpenny and Keegan Russell, I'm Gerald Bentley. Thanks for joining us here on TimeOut.